I missed this? I've got a broken U-joint here on the steering shaft. Yikes. Let's pull it out and see what we can do. They've started using locking steering bolts on these, so that could be a fun thing to try to remove. The wiring here is a little funky too. Somebody spliced in a couple of things, and I don't really know what, so I'm gonna have to dissect that. These are supposed to be the turn signal wires, the green and blue back here, but they're taped off and unplugged on the back side of the switch. This is not broken. Oh, I'm such an idiot. Okay, I cleaned off the dirt, and I was like, boy, the two halves of this thing have split, and that's gonna cause a lot of play. And then as soon as I take it out of the car, I clean it, and then I go, wait, there's an adjuster nut. Tighten it up, and then the slump will go away. You have to laugh at yourself. So the good news about this repair is I can really clean everything and grease the bearing here and up here. And then I can replace the ones you have to drill out on the bottom of the steering column with proper bolts.
They just sat there, so my brother's like, get these things out of here.
This is called Life Finds a Way. That's the sound of vacuum. I'm not really thrilled with the alternator fitment. You had to bend the bracket you see here. Makes a little bit of an S shape. I don't like that. These decorative fins here are just interfering with the motion, so I have basically between this mark and that mark to tension a belt. No, thank you. You know what? I'm just gonna rebuild the original alternator. Let's put her in. I would feel so much better just having something that I know works and is an OE fitment. So thank you to one of my supporters, Chris, for helping to fund the rebuild of the alternator. That is actually gonna go a long way. So thank you, Chris. Today I'm working on the electrics. I want to get all of my lights and wires connected just to make sure that it's legal to take on the roads.
What's this guy's name?
The car?
Yeah.
Josh named it actually Ivy. I really like it.
You like it?
I do.
Yeah, it's cool. Ivy. Well, have fun with Ivy.
Thank you. See you soon. Oh yeah, that's right. I named the car Ivy. Green with envy, desirable to some, poisonous to others, stubborn to kill. It's a simple rule. I see crack, I glue crack. You better pull up pants or I'll put glue down. VP, if you're watching this, guys, when you sell things like the sending unit, include the gasket for it. You don't want to buy a gasket kit separately from the water pump, so how is this any different? Maybe shame on me because I assumed that it would be included, but it didn't, so I'm gonna have to reuse my old one or find something similar that fits. Well, I don't want to dilly-dally anymore since I've got all my stuff here. Let's just smack it all back together. I've got the drive shaft separated here. The two halves are marked. I'm going to pull this off with the new bearing, and then the pilot bearing. Just get the rental tool, dude. While I have everything out, I've made sure to order the front seal for the transmission, which is a paper ring, and then the neoprene seal, which goes on the very front casing. I think somebody's put in the wrong clutch in here. We know that 20 millimeters is the difference between the B18, B20 clutches and the B30 clutch. So that disc in there, this is the old pressure plate, and sure enough, it's only taking up partial engagement. Clearly it'll work, but it ain't right. And now we're gonna go right. It's snowing a little bit. Finally, I've been here like almost 2 weeks. So I'm walking down to Soren's right now. We're going to use 2 very large pipe wrenches. And I think the clutch, you know, sometimes when you're putting a transmission in, it's really tight and it's just not happy with the mating of the bell housing to the engine. What seemed to help me was getting clutch cable on, and then I could disengage the clutch, and that sort of loosened up everything and helped kind of settle some of the tension. It's possible the disc inside gets a little wiggled around when you are installing the transmission, and so it's not exact. What I was trying to explain earlier was that you never want to have the final gap closed by tightening the bolts. That means that there's tension somewhere in between the alignment of the clutch disc, the pressure plate, flywheel, pilot bearing, and the input shaft of the transmission, or even the throwout bearing. So that's why I really try to get it so that all the bolts are still loose like this, but the gaps have been taken up, which tells me that I haven't forced anything. It's gone in on its own accord. Well, I should have seen this coming from a kilometer away. There is no way that rubber is gonna fit in here. And not only is that the problem, my stubborn behind spent probably an hour trying to get it to smush into place. Time was wasted. I am frustrated, but you know, the good news is changing that over does not take that much time, so I can probably get it swapped over very quickly. You know, someone had mentioned a little bit of rust in a notorious spot, and you know where I'm going with this. The top of the shock absorber mount, for whatever reason, looks just fine, but what on earth? It just, it looked so fine and then just completely rotted out. It just almost came out of nowhere to me. Something's going on here. Volvo must have had an oversight because this is, well, let's just say its reputation preceded it. It often feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Yeah, that's too bad. And you know what? It's gonna be just as bad over here now that I'm looking at the inside of it. That's all I have for today. Go away now.
Too much. You're out of touch. I'm out of time. But I'm out of my head when you're not around. You're out of touch.
If you don't like tiny animal skeletons, skip ahead a little bit. I'm currently vacuuming out the nest, and my body count is now up to 4. Dang. Life must be tough in Las Cruces. This dude hung himself. Gentlemen, Operation Eviction is complete. It's now time for Operation Gentrification. At the end of the day, the body count in the mouse house was 6 to 8 evictions. The rust sealer is drying, so are the seats. Now it's time to bleed the master cylinder. We need to have a talk about this little junction block. And the sensor that's attached to it, which is this guy here. This is a pressure differential sensor. And you can see already it's not okay. As one circuit, let's say, develops a fault, and you push the brakes, it then pushes, if there's a, let's say, an open on the right side, it'll push the valve over this way. The switch will drop down into the chamber, and the pressure light will activate by grounding. And then it says, oh no, we've got ourselves a leak. Because they say number 3 is the upper bleed nipple, but the picture points to the hose. So I'm guessing that means it's the other side, or is it the top bleeder nipple? Who knows? Because there's 3 nipples on the front. So too many nips, not enough chips. And I think what I'm gonna end up doing is the shorter method, which is just open up all 3 ports and bleed all 3 at the same time. But that means you have to do it manually. You can't use a vacuum gun. And that's fine. But it will be easier with 2 people, or 1 person and a very big stick. I'm fairly certain that I've figured out exactly what is going on here. Somebody has screwed in a portion of a screw in the switch to remain constantly open. That way the switch is not illuminating the brake light constantly. So this brake light in the middle will be illuminated by one of 2 things. If this switch is failing, or if the parking brake is on. So I guess instead of just unplugging the darn thing, this switch has been screwed literally. Exactly 1 liter of .4, and I had a little trouble in the front. Some of the lines needed to be tightened, and really tight. Like, I'm amazed it didn't strip out the brass tight. Brake pedal feels mushy. It doesn't feel, that's not the right word. It feels kind of soft. Like I'm used to the old, you know, the 122s where you don't have a booster, so you're just hitting the brakes and it's supposed to be firm, but here it's like real soft. I can feel the booster kind of breathing in and out. It's disconnected, of course, but we'll just have to drive it and see. I'm not losing pressure, so I can hold my foot there and it stays, and that's what we want. So
So it's only these two sides that are like this?
Mhm.
That is so weird. Man, this thing looks like you could put bags on it so easily. It's funny, you should have a project that's just like a can of worms, and I'm working on my can of worms, and it's just two different generation of cars.
these are like edible worms, though. It's not a complete loss.
Like gummy worms.
This flange is not supposed to have that wear on it because this washer is supposed to be thicker by 0.1 millimeter than the flange. It's not. It's been rubbing. It's been cooking the backside of the cam gear. That extra friction is no bueno. Looks like the flange is not any taller, or the flange is taller than the spacer. Okay, and then when you put it on here where it will actually sit into the grooves, there it snaps into place. Then the flange and the spacer are where they should be in the relative position. So something was mismatched, I'm guessing. This is probably the 4th day I've spent on this wiper motor, but I think what ended up happening is I must have not put the worm gear correctly when I glued it in place, and so basically my wiper arms will go from, they're backwards. They'll go from the top of the windscreen down, and I'm gonna have to install the arms backwards if I want any wipers at all, or else I risk them just breaking the gear again. Hey, it's who knows what time in the morning, and I get to learn about these garbage lights for the cluster. Gone are the days of simple push the socket into the hole, and now you've got a 4-piece thing with plastic tabs on the backside that will break, and just awful. Like, it's a jumbly mess, and half of them are missing, and you can see the rest are broken, so yay! I've been staring at this wiring diagram, tracing wires using the multimeter, and I just cannot figure out what is going on back here. And boy, I'm exhausted right now. It's just one of those late nights, you know, wiring. It's satisfying when it works, but in the meantime, real headache. I never knew there's a part number under here, under all the dirt. Wowie. She's beautiful. That's a couple of good-looking girls right here. I'm a mess. I haven't been this happy in 4 days. I finally got turn signals, bro. I mean, just poring over this diagrams and Swedish Embassy, God bless those guys. They are just, that has provided so much help. And let me just show you the wire setup for it, and we'll talk it out. They kind of wired in a 2-prong relay, and I couldn't even get that to work yesterday, and I'm glad that I didn't, because would I have wired that in and it worked successfully, I would have just been like, all right, well, it looks like we're not using a hazard switch, but now that we have a hazard switch, that is a much better improvement. Okay. The hazard switch has like too many wires that go to it. There's a couple of hints that Volvo wants to give you, but the book can be a little confusing. Like when the wiring diagram says blue and yellow, you're like, there's no blue wire with a yellow stripe. It's a yellow tag on it. This tag is very faded, but it says 15, the same way that this green tag says 30. Once I looked this up, it just made all the difference in the world. X is battery, P is pilot light, it's the dash light. L is load, and that's essentially where the switch is communicating to it. I just jumped up with joy once I got this all figured out. But let's just look at, take a note at the wires and the origin of them. And it does ground through the body of the switch. If you don't have a good ground in the dashboard, that connector there, that I, is actually what you would connect to ground. And so you got L and R, which is your left and right side respectively. This is becoming a long rant for a small task that was huge to me. Moving on. The gas tank is back. Let's put it in.
It's not that easy being green. Having to spend each day the color of the leaves. when I think it could be so much nicer being red, yellow, or gold, or something much more colorful like that.
Yeah, this engine's backwards. First of all, the washers, the thrust washers are the same. Thankfully, the cam retainer plate is a little bit thinner, so hopefully that'll minimize some of the wear. But still, now it's aluminum on brass versus before the rubbing was steel on brass. So with the valve cover off, no matter what, these timing marks only line up at the end of the exhaust stroke. The compression stroke, the cam gear is over here. So what is going on? I must have the wrong cam or something. Buttoning up takes a while. I also did not receive the correct upper radiator hose. It was just missing from my batch of items. I ordered one that'll be here in about 12 hours because it's 2 a.m. and I'm sleepy, so I'm gonna go sleep now. We'll just get back to it in the morning. It's about the journey, baby. Okay, it's time to start cranking again. I was gonna say this later, but I watched a video today called Cars Won't Make You Happy by Gears and Gasoline. Great video, but I'm sure I'm gonna feel entirely different once this thing fires up. I was thinking, what is it about cars that is so satisfying? And it must be the pride in your work, knowing that there are 1,500 different components and we have to get all of them working for this thing to run.
Green is the color of spring, and green can be cool and friendly like this. And I know green can be big like the ocean, and purple like a mountain, a tub like
That's a lot of blow-by.
Well, it can make you wonder why.
She's a rough customer.
Wonder I'm green. And it'll do fine.
Looks like we're doing a head gasket.
And I think it's what I wanna be.
Come on, I'll show you. By my calculation, we've got about 2 minutes of running time before she runs out of water. You know what that means? We're going for a test drive because we earned it. Can't tell in my voice, I am most seriously displeased. But we have brakes. Wow, this thing feels awful. Yeah, it's coming out of there, and then also the back of the head has a freeze plug that's leaking. I thought it was just those heater hoses, but you see how ugly it is still?
Yeah.
Dude, I flushed this thing for hours and it's still coming out brown. So, she's gross.
She's got a plug in one of those passages. You're gonna start with the pulling the head.
Yeah. I've got the head gasket. I just need to order the bolts, send the thing off to get machined. But then here's the thing. I'm like, okay, head's off. Now, how far do we go? New valves, grind the valves. I've got the seals for them,
Seats,
but are the springs going to get tested? Are they going to get rebuilt? You know, I'm going to drop it off at the shop and just see what they tell me. But sigh. How are you doing? Give me some good news.
The engine's supporting itself on my car.
Can I see it? Oh, look at that. Oh, cool, dude. So earlier today it wasn't.
As of last night, it wasn't.
What a contrast between those two engine bays.
Right?
They couldn't be more different. They almost have the same number of cylinders.
Well, you know, this thing, I actually, you know, as crazy as it might sound, it's simple. It's actually really simple.
Yeah.
I can't even hear me when I have this thing on. Yes, Lord Vader.
I'd like a number 3 with cheese, please.
I thought waste management was bad. That thing smokes worse than my truck.
You know, of all the stuff, I'm glad that the brakes at least work. All right, I'm gonna catch the sunset. I'll see you in a few.
No matter my head when you're not around, you're out of touch. I'm out of touch, out of touch, out of touch, out of touch, out of time.
Something splooshed. Ew. I've never burped a baby before, but I don't think it's supposed to sound like that.